King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly commentary in all areas of broadcasting: music, movies, TV, radio, streaming media, podcasting, and all forms of digital media. Now please welcome your host, a traditional and digital media professional with over 25 years of experience in terrestrial radio, television, print media, and has worked in the digital media sector for over 15 years. Here is the King of Podcasts. Don't expect any Game of Thrones or Avengers Endgame spoilers from me. It's also the end of the week, so where am I going to even do that for? You know, I'm not one of those people that are just the kind of people that are just going to just spoil a surprise. I don't do that either. That's not my nature. But I will talk about what has come from those two major events, and basically how it comes down to the fact that I feel like, I don't know if there's another way to go and put it, but there's still a chance for appointment viewing, appointment watching. There's still room for well-told stories, and there's still room for stories to have people practice patience, and it'll pay off for you. And these are the kind of stories we look for. Now, yes, we're getting it from a fictional tale of a medieval time from a very fictional place in Game of Thrones. Avengers Endgame is completely fantasy. So I get it. And it's a superhero comic, right? Through 11 years of base. And Game of Thrones has given us, 7 years of stories leading up to everything that happened here. So for those, something to be said about, yes, it might be nothing that's critically acclaimed and nothing that's extra special. It's all CGI and effects and this and that. But what's important is you have viewers of different ages, right? Teens, 20s, 30s, probably a lot of millennials and they're a little bit older than that have adapted into the comic books or adapted into the movies, and they just enjoyed all the characters that Marvel Comics has given us, or what Game of Thrones has given us. Therefore, a lot of money being spent, big cast, yes, but there's room for these shows to consistently deliver, rooms for these movies to consistently deliver. We're talking about Avengers, billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. Game of Thrones, millions upon millions for HBO, and tens of millions of viewers to a pay cable channel, which, you know, that tells you everything right there that you got to know. So think about that. And plus remember, how many people are trying to pirate the show and trying to watch everything that's going on with it as well? There's so much there to be said. So that's something that's very important to go and say as well. And I wanted to pull up one story that talks about the power of goodbyes. I just want to take a couple of things out of this from Variety.com and just say, as we kind of close out the fact that these two shows are, well, at least Game of Thrones is on its way out. And then we know that Avengers, this particular series, is now finished up as well. So it's there. And we got to this point. That's good. But something's going to be said as well about how when we have this here, I mean, the money that's being made, money to make money, spend money to make money, it's there. And people need to recognize that more because it's just been done. So this story talks about the cultural dominance of Avengers Endgame. Then there's the 8th and last season. That's what it was. 8th and last season of the Game of Thrones. Audiences are hungry for a sense of finality in their popular entertainment. At a time when many television shows keep cranking out new seasons after their audiences moved on. Movie franchises loathe to wrap things up after they've exhausted all narrative possibilities. There's something to be said about completing a story arc. And also the build to a story arc, I would add to this. People keep talking about Breaking Bad. It's been a couple of years. It generated a new level of enthusiasm during its final season as it barreled towards a bloody climax. And audiences didn't want to stay tuned forever, but they craved a conclusion. And a recent Variety cover story, Kevin Feige from Marvel Studios, the president there, says he was determined not to have characters such as Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Chris Evans as Captain America continue to grace screens indefinitely. We knew there needed to be a definite ending. There's an amazing line. Part of the journey is the end. That's what Endgame is. Perfect. And that's what we need here. All together. And we see movies that just can't stop themselves. From Lord of the Rings to now The Hobbit. From Star Wars moving on to going prequel and then going forward and just things like that. And then we move along to, say, Harry Potter. They're spinning off Fantastic Beasts, Where to Find Them. Same. It's just continuing to move forward. And then Marvel, you know, do you think they're going to do any better now if they're going to try to go just strictly for a diversity, more heroes of color, female central characters, LGBTQ leads. These should just be organic, not pushed upon and conformed upon those that have been fans for a long time. Because honestly, at this point, if you're a Marvel fan and you decided to tap out, not have to watch any other Marvel movies or anything like that, then you probably could, because you've gotten your fill. Maybe it would be nice to have Marvel to take a break, but Disney's not going to do that. The corporate suits will not allow that. And the farther they go with this, if they go with the movie franchise, anything else Marvel-wise, they're going to want to continue to build upon things that are diverse and inclusive. Because for whatever reason, movies are meant to do that. They are required to do that. If not, you're subject to ridicule and major scrutiny. And who knows? Probably getting a project shut down for all we know. But those kind of things we just don't want to worry about. Now, that's one thing I just thought I want to make a point of, is that we see this all here. And out of all the movies that were put together from the Marvel Cinematic Universe to get to where we are today, and now that it's already made $1.2 billion globally in its opening week alone, I haven't even looked at what the numbers look like now as we get into the next weekend, but it has made money all over the place. Let me just look at what they've done so far in terms of domestic and overall overseas. Here's the latest number as I got right now. Currently, $1.65 billion. $452 million domestic, 1.2 million international. And part of that is China. So in China, opening weekend, $175 million, 31 million in Mexico, 32 million in South America, 56 million in the UK. Amazing. So much. And I'll tell you, when I went to the theater to go see it myself, it was about it's an 18 screen theater, and about 12 of the screens were devoted to Avengers, because they knew they needed to make room for all these movies to be seen, and they did. And everything moved and flowed kind of nicely. But really, the other thing is that the movie theaters, they're kind of strung up on it because they have nothing else to work off of. They're stuck in a spot anyways. That's not a good thing, but that's where we are. And it's quite unfortunate, just to say that altogether. So this week's Broadcasters Podcast, I will not have an interview tonight or this week because of the fact that I did not have, with everything going on with Avengers, Game of Thrones, I thought that was enough to really go off of that. Plus, I am still booking some more guests. So I have a few more people down the line I want to go and speak to. We'll have some people from the TV industry. We'll have some people that are working in movies behind the scenes, screenwriters, actors, actresses. I have a few more people to bring on board that I'm going to bring on. I'm actually going to bring on a repeat guest, who's Professor Andrew Selapak, who's from the University of Florida. Going to get his perspective on the kids to talk about that as well. So that'll be good to go and bring up as well. I wanted to go ahead and talk about that and just see what the latest is, what he's getting from Generation Z and what his students are saying about everything when it comes to media. Other things, but also have a lot of stories to bring up that have just come up this week. Again, the ongoing story of the Writers Guild and the Association of Talent Agents. Staying on top of the story, we're going to talk about that. A couple of diversity and inclusion stories that, they were brought out. Obviously, the industries for Hollywood are looking at this and they're trying to make people take notice of it. So we'll put into that as well. We'll also talk about the digital streaming universe where it comes to Disney and their plans to basically really destroy cable and really put some work onto Netflix, because Netflix right now is under some scrutiny as well. They're putting a lot of money into what they're trying to do right now. So is Apple TV, so are others. And we're hearing from industry executives that are saying that Netflix might have to run ads even with the subscriptions. That's where they are at this moment. And there's much more. So I have a few things when it comes to radio stories. Again, a couple of stories that are just talking about representation of different industries. And there's a conformity, whether it's social, political, or corporate, that just decide to go and just, crawl their way in seedily, and it's just not necessary. But that's where we are with certain things. So I got all that to talk to you right now here on the podcast. Let's go and get started with the Writers Guild. So new stories going on with that. I know at the moment, Writers Guild and ATA are taking some time off. They are not meeting to the table once again. Meantime, the Writers Guild is expanding what they have as a staffing submission system. It's an online system that doesn't require agents. So what we know so far. Okay. April 12th. Let's do the timeline real quick. April 12th, Writers Guild Association of Talent Agents, if you have not been listening to the program, their talks fell through after efforts to revamp the 43-year-old rules governing how agents represent Writers Guild members. The Guild has imposed a code of conduct after talks collapsed with the requirements that agents cannot represent members unless the agents agree to bans on collecting packaging fees and owning stakes in production companies. And most major agencies have rebuked this. So the WGA required that members fired their agents. That's what happened last week. The Writers Guild has also sued creative artists, WME, UTA, ICM, alleging illegal conflict of interest practices, while the Associated Talent Agents have threatened legal action over managers and lawyers who perform agenting tasks of procuring employment. So, no new negotiations at this point. This past Friday, this is what's gone on with the online system we're talking about. The Writers Guild extolled the benefits of its do-it-yourself submission system website. In 26 days throughout the month of April, 2,135 submissions have been put in by 1,048 writers to 92 different shows. It's a lot. I don't know who's going through all this, and I don't know how well this works and how the Hollywood studios and networks are really going to work with this and how they're going to feel about it. But I'm sure they're not happy about it. Now, this was last week, but the latest going on now, I haven't heard anything else new as of late when it comes to this. The latest story I have right now are just really opinion pieces because there's not much more to be said, except for the lawsuits. Deadline.com writes a story about why did writers have to fire their agents, what is WGA's Endgame, and other burning questions that are addressed. And this was an interview that was done with the head of the Writers Guild, David Goodman. And here's what we got. So WGA West president, which we'll talk about WGA West a little bit later on in the show, he answers some questions. So now, there have been a couple of people that have been going to the Writers Guild that have been complaining to him. So, as we know, the serious conflict of interest within the agencies is embedded in the often abused practice of packaging, as well as agencies' foray into producing, which is deemed particularly egregious. And one showrunner, who's not mentioned here, said, how can your employer on the production side also represent you on the agency side and negotiate with your interest in mind? There are some showrunners that have pointed critically to those running the Writers Guild, saying that, quote, there are many people at every level, including people who are very successful, who have been noting that what the leadership has been saying and doing didn't match, and I've been questioning their strategy. And the leadership is, there's issues with the leadership's campaign to convince members to vote yes in support of the code of conduct. Now, Showrunners told this writer that David Goodman had assured writers they would never be required to fire their agents, and an overwhelming yes vote would be used to leverage in bargaining negotiations with the talent agents to get a favorable deal. So now, one of the people that actually did go out and publicly speak out against David Goodman was the showrunner for CBS's SEAL team, John Glenn. He says, I feel lied to and I'm angry about it, end quote. He says, quote, I went to a meeting hosted by the Guild at the W Hotel a few months ago. A group of perhaps 100 showrunners and creators were told explicitly this action would not require us to fire our agents directly. Now we are being aggressively asked to do just that. According to multiple sources, the Writers Guild didn't have the right to force the members to e-sign the letters. And also sources told Deadline that several showrunners brought up the issue with the Guild's legal counsel, and the WGA admitted they had no authority. And David Goodman said this during the run-up to the vote, quote, many members asked whether they had to directly fire. Moving along, legal counsel then determined the best protection for writers against any future potential commission disputes was to have every individual terminate their agreement in writing. The board and the council are the governing bodies of the Writers Guild. One of their obligations is to interpret the working rules. That is their right and their duty. Wasn't fun, we understand that, but our members understood the rationale and complied in overwhelming numbers. As to the response of coercive methods, he says, are you reporting this with an actual quote, or are you just repeating a rumor? We've never told captains to talk to members this way. If you report it as if it's a fact, there never will be any directive to speak to members this way. Any writer who feels they've been treated harshly by anyone in this campaign should contact the Guild directly, or him directly. So he's just saying it's fake news. So again, the response that the talent agencies are worried about now, which of course we already know that some agencies are worried about, where some of their employees are feeling that they're going to be laid off or fired. 7,000 writers signed termination form letters out of 8,800 current members with an agent. The other 1,800 said most of the writers hadn't signed termination letters, or retirees are no longer actively working. Deadline mentions that they had at least two dozen working writer showrunners established and successful that have not fired their agents, and that the qualification of the Guild was insulting. And that what would happen if the writers did not fire their agents? See, this is the whole point. Why does it have to be forced this way? Why does it have to be a conform? Okay, everybody's got to fall in line. This is a union. And the union is determining, okay, everybody has to fall in line. Because you have to play along. So either you play along with the agents and get screwed, or you play along with the Writers Guild. They're supposed to be helping you, and you're getting screwed there too. Well, David Goodman said this. There's no plan to sanction any member who has not yet e-signed, or any decision to do so will be made by the board or council in accordance with the Constitution. Member adherence requiring that writers may only be represented by agencies or signatory to the Code of Conduct has been a total success. He's covering his tracks. I mean, this is really what's being said is it's just something. There was a meeting between the two sides that week, a couple weeks ago, that was the emergency summit initiated by top agents hours before the deadline to negotiate a week-long extension. But 4 negotiation sessions in that extra week before talks broke off without a new agreement, and Goodman says that if a member didn't want the code imposed, they should vote no. And then he showed there was a video that he said saying that. He said a vote yes, that isn't real, gives only phony leverage. I said I repeatedly wanted an honest vote. It wasn't the Guild's fault that there's little progress and made the post-expiration date. The agencies asked for us an extension. We agreed. The committee went the ATA on 4 days during that final week. Even the agencies refused to make concrete proposals that addressed the Guild's concerns. This is just a tough fight they're going to keep going after. All these people are going after it, and this is just bad. And I'm telling you, it's going to affect content. All this is going to affect content. And people are not paying attention to this. I don't hear a lot of talk about it because nobody knows, you know? So people are talking about it, I mean, just within the industries, but I'll tell you, nothing's being said to anybody else about it, and that's what's happening. Now, IndieWire writes a story about how there are 12 things that are going to, about the standout that you should know, because Hollywood's waiting to see what happens. And among the things that we're talking about was, which you didn't know about, I bet. This is a few weeks ago, but I thought this is a point to be put out. Guess what influences this deal with the WGA ATA standoff? Private equity. Yeah, that evil term I always talk about. It's a red flag. So here's something you didn't know. The influence of private equity and IPO dreams. One of the important backdrops of the WGA ATA standoff is there's $3 billion in private equity, over $3 billion, that the agencies have taken in the last decade. Instead of being partner-owned, the Writers Guild say the top 3 agencies now operate under the pressure of private equity-level profit expectations. Taking a shift away from the agency's core mission of servicing clients, fulfilling fiduciary obligation to always act solely in the best interest of clients and avoid conflicts of interest. Thank you. Everything corporate, everything that's union and all this kind of crap, it just comes in here. So it's not even about the creative. It's not even about the business. It's about the money. And this is the big problem here. This is a large tangled web. And again, I am happy, not that the Writers Guild, you know what, I'm not happy with it all. Because, you know what, obviously I wouldn't want a union representing me. But I know some people, that's the way it is. But the other reason that private equity plays into the effect is that there were a number of agencies that got to be publicly owned. They wanted to get IPOs. So here's what happened. These private equity-backed agencies aggressively look for ways to use their access to top Hollywood creative talent to grow their business beyond the 10% commission of talent representation. See, not even the packaging fees. They want to get past that 10%. They wanted to make more off of it. So they were leveraging off of this. This is the talent agents. So they've been fucking over the writers for years, not just for packaging, but also making money off of them on top of that. A double dip. The open secret in Hollywood is private equity was only the first step of CAA and WME becoming publicly owned companies. News leaking of WME's impending IPO and estimates of CAA's partner agents' profits from private equity investments, which for the top 4 executives at CAA is over $250 million, has only fueled resentment and spurred the belief agencies have fundamentally moved away from the principles of the talent representation business. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it? And that's where we are. Nobody realizes what's going on here. And here's the outcomes. If there was a deal to be struck, new rules would have to be written regarding packaging that the WGA believes eliminates or at least lessens the conflict of interest. We know that. More possibly, a more likely outcome is that the agencies share a piece of their packaging fees with the WGA, which they offered as a proposal, but was denied. What they originally offered was 1%. They weren't going to give up that much. The dilemma the ATA faces is this. Even if it were willing to significantly increase the percentage of fees, it's safe to assume the actors and the directors' guilds would also demand a piece of those packages that include those members. So again, this is just going to be a bigger problem. So it's not just the writers, the directors, the actors. SAG and DGA would also get involved with this. The agents who have been just leeching. Listen to all this. I don't even know about this right here. Not only are they doing the packaging fees, they're also doing work with the help of private equity to go public and make more money off of that. And the private equity firms that are helping to boost up these agencies, the top 4 executives are getting paid handsomely on top of commission. No wonder this is such a mess. This is a major problem and there's no answer for it. And the problem is, it's just as bad as Washington, D.C. You think Congress is bad at trying to get shit done? What about Hollywood? This is truly, it's a shame, but that's where we are right now. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. I don't know what you do here. I don't know what they do to kind of work this out where in the next couple of weeks, I mean, what is going to be affected by this? We don't know. Anyways, I can continue about this issue for hours and hours, I'm sure. And there's nothing else to be done about it. It's a big problem and that, there's no fixing this at all. So there is one other place I'm going to go to, which is called the Disruptive Competition Project, which did talk about Hollywood competition, regulation, and disruptive innovation. So a couple of things to mention out of this story I want to just mention before I go ahead and wrap things up on this story. So in the Hollywood Reporter Eric Gardner analogizes the battle he compares it to the disruption of the transportation industry and a fight between ride-sharing services such as Uber and Lyft and the tax industry. In short, the ATA and other talent agencies support strong licensing language, claiming it will protect artists and ensure fair and lawful competition. Organizations such as the WGA will support a loosening of that language as they feel talent agencies currently have too much control over occupational licensing and should not be engaging in the practice of packaging, which serves to benefit the talent agencies over who they represent and negatively impacts competition in the market. So also, SAG-AFTRA has also talked about that the nature of the entertainment industry, quote, gives the gatekeepers to employment immense power. This is the important part. The manner by which artists obtain employment and the brief duration common to most industry jobs leave few artists in a position to scrutinize or challenge those who control their employment opportunities. For these reasons, the California legislature has long recognized the need to regulate the gatekeepers. My point. There's too few people that control and hold creativity back and do not let it foster and do not give it the space to get to a bigger space and to be noticed. It doesn't happen. That's a big problem. Nobody's talking about it. And it's here. And somebody tell me how to fix this problem, because, we need to see something happen here. And if anything's going to be fixed, but I don't know. Again, there's no answers here. There's no end in sight. That's what it looks like. So the other thing that's being said is that because of the networks, the network TV right now is in a bad spot, right? We already know that they are suffering. And the broadcast networks now, they're stuck at a point where they're not going to have a whole lot of pilots coming in for them to choose off of. According just to the start of a Variety article, they talk about the pilot season coming up. They said that full raging diversity discussions and numerous new rivals entering the original content game, pressure is on the broadcast networks more than ever to make the right call when it comes to pilot pickups. Because here's the point. What could happen is this could ruin network TV as we know it. What do you do then? When they can't bring aboard new programming, they can't go through their normal setups to do that. Are they going to do this on their own? Because no matter what happens is certain projects come aboard and they go to ABC Studios or CBS Studios or whatever, and they go that route. But if the studios don't have projects to work on, they have nothing to provide to the networks. That's a big problem. And there's no answer here. So this is all the problems they have. And nobody's giving an answer about it. But network TV, if you expect it to survive, it won't. Because the digital streamers have their way of doing their own thing. So they're not worried about it at all. Now, another thing I just want to bring up a couple things here where it's the push for conformity, right? I talked about that a little while ago about the Marvel Universe wanting to do that. Well, they're trying to do the same thing to every other thing in here at all. So we know there's really a lot of divisiveness within Hollywood and within entertainment in general. Because in Hollywood, the Writers Guild of America, the pushback they're also trying to do, which I don't get what this does, okay? Are we going to worry about money, or are we going to worry about dealing with, trying to get some kind of entitlement? Because when I see this story by the Writers Guild of America West, they did what's called the first ever inclusion report card. So, number one, they're worried about the packaging fees, and they're worried about what the agencies are doing. The other problem they're worried about is who the Writers Guild is comprised of. And they said now that 88% of showrunners are white. So according to the employment data of the Writers Guild, 2,895 jobs in the 2018 TV staffing season, the Guild found systemic discrimination, quote, against writers from historically underrepresented groups remains pervasive in the hiring of television writers. 36% of staff writers are women, quite short of gender parity. And there are fewer people of color, they say, in writers' rooms than in the U.S. population, 27 to 39%, respectively. Writers with disabilities comprise less than 1%. Then they move along into race and gender by staffing level. They say next that when you're talking about women as executive producers, only 17% comprise are women. 24% of showrunners are women. People of color are mostly seen as staff writers and executive story editors, but not executive producers and showrunners. They're not the ones on top. Another fight within Hollywood is the fact that in this story, data on sexual orientation and gender identity, just based on self-identification, was incomplete by the time of this publishing of this report. Several LGBTQ plus writers told the report card authors, the Inclusion and Equity Group of Writers Guild Association West, they were told by agents and executives that they, quote, don't count as diverse, end quote. Yeah. And then they talked about ageism, knowing that only high-level writers tend to be able to work past the age of 50. Near total absence of staff writers over 50. So there's systemic age discrimination. So what is the Writers Guild trying to do here? Ask yourself that question. So they want more money. They want more diversity, more inclusion, all across the board. See, I support the fight for more money. I support the fight that they don't need the agencies to do this. See, opening the door so that everybody gets to open the door, and the talent agents are no longer the gatekeepers that hold organic diversity and inclusion back. Does that make sense? I don't want. See, when they put systemic in there, they're talking about it's like this is just the environment's creating this. Okay, I believe there's part of that. And I believe Hollywood does have those old rules, and that's how things happen. But we know that things are changing. We've seen what's already happened with the change of the Me Too movement. We've talked about that. This right here, the writers are pushing back on the talent agents. That fight I support. I do not justify or validate this conformity to ageism, race, gender, diversity. I mean, I don't get that part. They want to instill affirmative action into Hollywood. Well, we're already doing that. I mean, you see the actors and the actresses and the directors and the showrunners, they're all placating to this. So they're being hypocritical. So what they say at the Oscars and the Emmys, they're saying, oh, we celebrate. Look who the award winners are. See, that's the other problem. Look who's winning the awards. So much diversity and inclusion, right? But yet, there's not enough of those over there. Okay, well, talk to me. What is it you want? Do you want to have money in your pocket and you want to have everybody to have an equal chance to get a piece of the pot? Or do you want to just, everybody should just get a chance. Everybody should be entitled to get a chance. And then none of you will get a chance to get a project off the ground, because what does this report card do for the mainstream public that watch your content? Okay. How many people are really important to say, okay, we need to make sure that, this movie has a foreign national and a transgender and a person with disabilities, and they're women and they're black and they're Asian or they're Indian. Does that make any sense? How is that supposed to make a project a project? Somebody try to explain that to me. I don't get it. But this is what they're trying to do. Conformity. More conformity. Okay, because of the Old Town Road song from Lil Nas X. Another story that came out about conformity. And this is another thing I don't get. And this is alarming gender representation on country radio. Billboard reported this. They said that a new study that even when the casual listener already knows, country radio is heavily male dominated. And alarming evidence that the gender imbalance is only getting worse. So there was a gender representation on country radio, a study of published reports from 2000 to 2018. Published on the University of Ottawa's Jada E. Watson in consultation with Women Nashville. It's a collective that advocates for equal opportunities and market share for women in the music industry. So they used media base for country airplay reports on radio. And they said of the top 150 songs on year-end reports from the top of the millennium to last year, as well as 2018's weekly airplay charts, they investigated, and they said the long-standing practice of programming women at 13 to 15% of the station's playlist is not only self-perpetuating, it seems to be a tangible effect on female artists' careers. I'm surprised that they put this all together and said this. Okay. And they go through the whole study. I'm not going to go through all this, but, they also make the mention of that right now country music is in a bad spot because there are no women right now in the top 20. This was back in December of last year. That was it. And that's, I understand where they're coming from, but, what's being done about it? Again, let's bring up like this. Let's go ahead and go to the real crux of everything, okay? So we're looking for Hollywood, which doesn't want to budge, which is run by a number of corporatized big money cats. Nashville, run by a lot of big suits, big money record companies. What are they saying about it? Are they doing anything about it? No. And I'm not going to feel guilty about that. I'm not going to feel guilty about trying to bring this point across, because I'd rather have a playing field that's open to get rid of the gatekeepers so that the door's open for content to get out there and be fostered. But I want content from everybody. Okay? But I don't want it to be where it has to be, well, we only can take this person of this group. No. It's like trying to pick a team of if you want to pick a team for basketball, like, you're trying to pick up sides for like a pickup game, and you want to choose who you think you want. And it's like, you're not going to make everybody in the world happy that way. Okay? And you're not just, what you do is, which is most important, when somebody gets a foot in the door, remember, it's not only who you know, it's not only what you know, it's who you know, right? So my point is, where are those that have been able to show run and move themselves up the ladder? So where are they trying to bring people in? I'm sure they are. But I'm not hearing anything about it. Are you? Because here's the thing too. This inclusion card, they talk about a think tank for inclusion and equity, and the people that are on this as members. Shonda Rhimes. Okay. And Glenn Mazzara. Shonda Rhimes, the most popular showrunners right now. She's moving to Netflix. She has a couple of shows on ABC still, right? And then what? So why isn't, I always hear about people when one director or one showrunner comes in and they're doing so good, and then what happens? Normally the networks, the studios, they'll find somebody, oh, this person's a friend of this, so let's bring him aboard. Well, then you know what? When somebody has that space, then it's upon that showrunner or that director. They should be able to go and get those people up the ladder. Okay? They should. I never heard that this was all a big problem before. And of course, this happens this year. A first ever inclusion report card. I don't know anybody who asked for this. Did you? That's what I want to know as well. So this is I don't hear anybody from the guild talking about it, but this report card was a study by the think tank for inclusion and equity, which doesn't represent the entire Writers Guild. But the Writers Guild, nobody's going to talk about this. They're worrying about trying to get their money, the money they're owed, or the money they're supposed to be getting properly from what they're doing with the agents. Okay, they're not worried about this. But this, as everything else is going on with that battle, that standoff, this story gets dropped in here in the middle of it. I think it's just quite interesting they put that out there and that people are talking about it. And I don't know. Somebody tell me what to think about this and all that's going on. But I just find it fascinating. Anyway, I've gone long enough about the WGA. We'll talk about it later. At the bottom of the Billboard story, I wanted to bring up that. There we go. Let's go into digital streaming, which I don't hear them having any problems with diversity or inclusion. See, here's the other thing. The Writers Guild's worrying about that, but I'm pretty sure you can see a lot of diversity and inclusion in all the digital streaming. So why does it matter that the movies are doing that? Or why does it matter that network TV has that? Those are old fossils. As we know, the future is digital. And I'm telling you, go pick shows that are on Netflix or look at shows at Hulu or Amazon. I'm sure there's got to be some programming that is for diverse and inclusive audiences, right? Because there is. Most of the content that's out there is very liberal in taste anyway, because of the taste of Hollywood. So this is Hollywood's problem. What are they doing to fix this? And there are those in corporate that are conforming to that. See, the conformity, because conformity. And you know what conformity does? It crushes. It destroys. And that's what's going on right now in Hollywood. That's what goes on in Washington and other places. Corporate conformity, political correctness conformity, and this gender, social, cultural conformity. All this here, all it does is disrupt. It just creates problems. So nothing will get fixed. And I don't know anybody who's thinking about that at all. Let's talk about, first of all, Forbes and Netflix. One of the stories I said was Netflix talking about they might have to run ads. What industry experts are saying, there was at a conference they were talking about this, and they said at the IAB's digital content new fronts. Netflix would have no choice but to start displaying ads, and Netflix is already recruiting people to help grow the business. And Netflix has said it doesn't want to run ads, but it might have to if they want to grow. That's what's being said. And what they're talking about now is that there should be a subscription version and a non-subscription version, and to let it go that way. They should. Now, one of the people that were on a panel here at this particular event was Joshua Lowcock. He's with a media agency called UM. He's a global brand safety officer, U.S. Chief Digital and Innovation Officer at the agency owned by Interpublic Group. He said this, interesting now, quote, "We grew up in digital believing we should inject ads everywhere at every moment we could. And that's why you've seen ad blockers and a move to ad-free environments. But I think there will become a tipping point where ads come back. Netflix is ad-free now, but I can't imagine where they can't be ad-free forever. If you look at their content costs, that's where addressable advertising and new ad formats will come in." Netflix didn't say a word about it. And one of the things that will be happening coming up is Disney will pull its movies from Netflix this year to stream on its new service. Well, what about that new service? Well, we've talked about it. We've heard about it. Disney Plus will arrive in November. So here's what's going to say. The House of Mouse have been planning the fight for years. They have their huge catalog of Pixar movies, Marvel, Star Wars films to Netflix, and that streaming gen got quality content, something its original programming badly lacked. And Disney got secondary distribution and money, lots of money. They would get paid $300 million annually by Netflix for this content. And now, Disney Plus would offer a subscription of $6.99 a month. Almost half the cost of a standard Netflix subscription. Yep. If they get $7 a month, Netflix can't compete with that. And I see an erosion of Netflix. And so what happens to the money that they've been spending, getting junk bonds and spending billions of dollars? Same thing with Apple. What happens now? Because when Disney Plus comes into play, the tables are turned. And the digital streaming war is even on more than it was before. Netflix will no longer have the stranglehold on the market. They will be struggling to keep it. They will become Napster. What it was at the start of the music industry's change to digital. And what happened to Napster? They didn't survive. They got swallowed up to the likes of Spotify, Apple, Pandora, Amazon, and they're done. And that's what they are now. How bad is that? Another thing with diversity in radio, diversity as well. Rolling Stone put a story out about diversity in radio. Because there is now the FCC considering deregulation in the radio industry, which I think is a mistake. I want to turn things back around, but we're not getting that. So the moment they say the FCC recently reports that 7% of FM stations are owned by women, less than 3% are owned to minority broadcasters. And here's what's going on. The National Association of Broadcasters, the lobbying group that represents many of the biggest conglomerates in radio, evil, asking the FCC to loosen its limits on radio ownership in large media markets, eliminate any limits in small markets. So more regulation, more deregulation. So we're not even going to go with the 1996 Telecommunications Act. We want to go farther than that. And that's a mistake. Again, I'm not a fan of this whatsoever. Again, it's these established media types that are just allowing this all to happen. And people just don't care. And you know, do you understand? Do you see all the problems that are going on here where things are just bad? People don't get what's going on here. Where it's corporate, diverse, another fighting, bucking rams that are just fighting with each other and they're going nowhere. They're just going to fight each other till they're bloodied and there will be no answer, no resolve, no conclusion. That's where we are. Now, another thing I can make mention too is that I also saw that Clear Channel is able to get themselves into their next phase. They're going to get out of bankruptcy. They're going to hold on to $5.6 million in debt. They're going to be okay. And they're going to be able to go into $16.1 billion to $5.75 billion. And according to Bob Pittman, they'll say that they're going to be a multi-platform audio company, vast and improved financial profile, positioned to continue to innovate and offer cutting-edge technology, products, and services to our audience. Right. So again, they just continue to do what they're going to do. And if they decided to go and innovate, then they're going to just put themselves more into debt. You already see that happening. That's what they're going to do to themselves. They don't get it. Just don't get it. Interesting story I saw from Politico I thought was interesting. Why AM radio still matters. I don't want to bring too much about this, but this is the lo-fi voices that speak for America. Another place where people could go ahead and be, where you could have a lot of people listening to whatever voices that are out there, whatever things, when, if you're feeling like it's too crowded on the internet. And radio used to be a place for people to go to where they can go ahead and broadcast themselves and people could hear it. Have that village voice, but they don't have that. And AM radio, nobody talks about, they don't say anything about trying to survive it or make it better, nothing. And these are the problems. And there's a lot of good stations that are out there that are doing things and trying to help out. A couple of stations they talk about when it comes to diversity. The Postal Intercity of Baltimore, WOLB, and the fact that during the 2015 Freddie Gray riots, the jockeying of the 2020 mayoral election, that they're a voice in the community and hopefully trying to keep peace, trying to keep things that make things better. Then there's St. Michael's, Arizona, and KTNN AM, which is speaking to the Navajo Nation. Because who else do they have to speak to that community? And they reach out to a lot of people, which is quite interesting. This is a station in Lexington, Nebraska, KRVN AM. And with them, they talk about grain prices, human interest stories, ranchers' advice, soil nutrients, in-depth discussions on the U.S.-China trade impasse, but it's for farmers. And again, it's something that the internet would not necessarily serve. You got Kansas City, Kansas, KYYS AM, and it's a Spanish language station. I'm talking to those who are Mexicans, Central American immigrants, and others in Kansas City. And what else? Kansas City, Kansas, who you never think would be supported to the Spanish community there, but that was an important place to go. Then you got Manchester, New Hampshire, WGIR. And for political talk radio, they don't go too far to the left, too far to the right. They stay in the middle, trying to be a reasonable voice, which is interesting. You got a station that represents Cajun culture they mentioned as well, which is good. There's places for diversity, inclusion, for voices to be heard. And they can be on the internet and be streamed out and people can find their place. But to force that on people is not good either. But this is a fight we're going on with. The internet opens the doors and there's only a few places for diversity inclusion to open up. So the thing is, instead of trying to force it on established media, go to digital because that's the open door. And as long as we're not getting censored and we're not getting pushed back and freedom of thought, freedom of speech, and freedom of creativity is not being held back, well, that's fine. One of the places that's not allowing that as of late, YouTube. They lost $70 billion in market cap because of their algorithm. Because they're trying to curb the spread of fake news and conspiracy theories. And what do? Well, they started hurting ad revenue across the board. Ad revenue grew 15% versus the 24% it saw a year ago. But Alphabet stock this past Tuesday dropped 8% overall. First quarter 2018, Google began making changes to YouTube's algorithms designed to stop harmful content from appearing in the feed of recommended videos you see on the side of a video page. The goal is to make it hard to find videos full of conspiracy theories, fake news, and other detritus that occasionally sent advertisers fleeing from the platform. Plus, YouTube's removed millions of channels and videos, violating the company's harmful content policies. And it's a big problem that they have made mistakes of. And again, corporate screws things up. And for what? What is it? What good does this do? It doesn't. And people spoke with their shares. People spoke with their money, and they took their money out of it. And there you go. I mean, do you understand? People don't want this. All right? Leave our digital content alone.
Because obviously, the corporatization, the control, the stranglehold that traditional music forms, traditional music units, movies being on DVD or CD or tape, VHS, beta, whatever. The union is controlling who bought what you put out, who was going to be able to put out the projects. There was all this control that we talked about for decades. We have more freedom for content more than ever before. But people want the traditional outlets to still be open and to open themselves more. And they're trying to pressure them to do that. But people are leaving anyway. So why go after those places from the first place? It doesn't matter. But nobody cares. They just decide to go and do what they're going to do. And that's it. These kind of problems are just too much. But nobody's going to answer for this. Saddening. So I don't know what to do from here, guys. It's upsetting. But, I wish there was a better answer for all this. I wish there was a way to have some of these issues go away. But you know what? That's what's going on. It's like, wow. It's a lot of things. So there you go. Anyway, we're going to leave it at that. So I should start getting everything ahead with some new interviews starting this next week. I got a couple interviews already lined up next week to record, so that'll give us about a good month of content. And I have a few more interviews over the next couple of weeks I'll be putting together. And I'll give you a heads up on those once we get to those and we push them out. Meantime, that's going to call for the show today. Thank you all for tuning in. Please subscribe to the show. Look for the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, where you find your podcasts. And by all means, please do leave a rate and review. Hopefully you'll leave 5 stars. I would really appreciate that. And with that said, thanks all for listening here to the show. Do appreciate all of you listening in. And by all means, remember, all of you, and keep this most important because it's very important for all of you to remember. Don't let this conformity, whether it's corporate or political or social, control you. You have it, okay? Content is king. Everybody knows that. And the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, presented by broadcasterspodcast.com and kingofpodcasts.com. The Broadcasters Podcast is brought to you by kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. If Amazon is good enough for the King of Podcasts, it most certainly is good for you. kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. Find all the links to subscribe to the show on Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, as well as where you can follow the show on Twitter by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at kingofpodcasts.com.